Good morning, monster lovers. This is Graham Nolan, your host for 31 Days of Monsters, and we are at day 18. And today we're going to talk about the 1931/1932 version of Dr. Jekyll and Dr. Jekyll and Mr. Hyde. It's a Reuben Mamoulian production, and it starred Fredric March. Fredric March was the first horror actor to win Best Picture Oscar up until Anthony Hopkins won in Silence of the Lambs. However, I have to say, this is a monster role, whereas I think, Hopkins, he's a serial killer. That exists. That's real. So I still consider this the only horror film in which an actor won for Best Actor, because this can't be real, and Hannibal Lecter can. So anyway, there's really no good trailer of this available, so I've got this really cool changing sequence which we can watch. If I can just pull it up real quick. There we go. That's the first time in the movie when Jekyll turns into Hyde on his own, without his permission. In other words, prior to that, whenever he turned into Hyde, he would drink his potion and turn into it. And it's at that point he finds that he loses control. It's interesting that this is Jekyll and Hyde has been cited as the inspiration for Stan Lee and Jack Kirby's The Hulk, and it's really quite evident in this film. There's so many things that you see, especially in those early Hulk stories, where at first the Hulk would turn at night, but then it became due to anger and rage, and the same thing starts to happen here, where he no longer has control. This is based upon the Robert Louis Stevenson novella, The Strange Case of Dr. Jekyll and Mr. Hyde. A classic that explores the inner and outer personalities, the good, the evil. If you will, long before Sigmund Freud even started his theories about that. About how we all have good in us, and it's a veneer that holds back the primordial man, if you will. And primordial man is what they based the look of Hyde on in this. He's strictly based on a Neanderthal man. What's interesting too is that every time that Jekyll changes into Hyde, he changes. His appearance degrades. So when he first turns into Hyde, yes, he's Neanderthal, but he's a well-groomed Neanderthal. His hair seems a little bit more in control. And each time he changes, his skin gets darker. His hair gets wilder, until the final sequence when he just he has absolutely no control by the end of the movie, and it's almost Hulkish, where rage or fear or some type of desire forces the change in him. And when he changes at the very end, he's a wreck. I don't know how they did it with the eyes, but like his eye, it looks like they had something pulling down on his eyes like this. And that makeup was so invasive, I guess you could say, for Fredric March. It almost damaged his natural good looks forever. He was hospitalized shortly when they finished filming this movie. So that had to be tough. It had to be tough on him. Fredric March was at this point, he was a young man, very, very good looking. He was an Arrow shirt model. And you can see it. He looks like he stepped out of an advertisement of the day, back in the 1930s. And when he turns into Hyde, it's that dichotomy that makes this one work. I think this is the best version of Jekyll and Hyde that I've ever seen. I keep saying Jekyll because that's the way you always heard it, but in the film they refer to him as Jekyll, and I think that's the proper pronunciation. So the way they achieved that transformation, other than cuts and makeup and all that, but the really cool part is when he begins the transformation and Fredric March is really acting. He's doing his painful things. I love that. And what they did was they put colored makeup on him that the camera couldn't see. The black and white camera couldn't see. And I believe they used green and red bases. So when they would change a filter on the camera, the filter would come across, and let's say it was a green makeup on his face. When the red filter came over, it brought out the green, and that's how his face, all those highlights under the eyes and the mouth and all that makeup stuff started to come, sort of dissolve into the image that we see. Don't forget, this is 1931. This is pretty cool stuff for them to develop and make that transformation scene. Really, really good. This was a Paramount film, and it was obviously an Academy Award winner. Did really well at the box office, but Paramount was floundering, and it wasn't enough to keep them out of bankruptcy. In 1941, when they remade this thing, MGM did it with Spencer Tracy, and not only did they buy the rights to this particular screenplay, but they bought the film itself, and so it was shelved because they didn't want it competing with their new big production that they're doing with Spencer Tracy. And so it was many years before this thing got shown again. And when it was shown again, it was shown under the Breen/Hayes committee, which was like the Comic Code Authority in that, it regulated what you could show in films, whereas the first one was made pre-code, and it was much more racier. And I love pre-code films. They hold up so much better, particularly when you're dealing with certain subjects. Miriam Hopkins in this is wonderful. Her sexuality, as she's trying to lure, she's a hooker basically, and Jekyll is like a paragon of virtue. And it's interesting some of the themes that they talk about or they explore in this film. Not only the good and evil, but there's sexual repression. Jekyll is a good man, but he takes shortcuts, to prove his theories. He's impatient, and we see that in his relationship with his girlfriend, who is waiting for her father's approval for them to get married, and he wants it now. I want to get married now, and they profess their love and all that kind of stuff. And she won't give in without the father, and that's a reoccurring plot point. And you could see, his repression, and he even indicates that because when he helps the hooker, Ivy, played by Miriam Hopkins, he makes the analogy of a man in the desert with no water, and his doctor friend, thinks he's speaking blasphemy, and calls him out on it. So part of his shortcuts are what doom him in the end, because he also takes shortcuts in his development of his serum. They don't talk about what that serum is or how it works or anything like that. He mixes it like a cocktail. He says no strict measuring. It's like he's making an old fashioned, with a couple dashes of bitters in there, and it works. And it's funny because really this is sort of a metaphor for alcoholism in a way, that he mixes this drink and it changes his personality, and he becomes Mr. Hyde. And the old saying that a drunk man's words are a sober man's thoughts. So as he plays Hyde, he's got no filter. And Fredric March is just amazing in the Hyde character. He's so creepy. He's so scary because he does have no filters. He scowls at people, he growls at people, he bashes them, he does things intentionally evil, tripping a guy. And another theme they explore is the physical and mental abuse. I forgot how disturbing this film is, because the character of Ivy wants to die. She's willing to kill herself if she can't get out of this relationship with Hyde. And they even show you the bruises on her, and she shows the scars on her back from the beatings that Hyde has given her. Unbeknownst to her, she's showing it to Dr. Jekyll. And, he's disgusted by himself and by what he's turned into. And he promises her solace, and he promises her that she'll never be tormented by Hyde again. He'll never show up again, because he's made this mental decision that now that his girlfriend was back, they were going to reunite, and he was done with his experiments and all that. But he had gone too far, and now he had no more control over it. So Ivy goes back, and she's celebrating her freedom once more from this horrible relationship. And Hyde walks into her room, and it's terrifying to see the look on her face. This is a disturbing movie. It's not like some of these other classics where you can watch, all the time. It's sort of like Freaks. It's very, very good, but more than once a year is more than enough, because it does touch on a lot of disturbing things, and they handle it in a very, very good way too. So I hope you guys did watch this. If you haven't, check it out. You can rent it on Amazon Prime. It's like $3.99, something like that. But it really is the best version of Dr. Jekyll and Mr. Hyde you're going to see. So good morning, everybody. Let's see who is here. Our usual cast of characters have checked in, I see. Devil Flyer, JP Roca, Dr. Mask's Retro Elixir is here, who says also that he saw this a couple of years ago, thought it was really good. Makeup on Hyde, very creepy. Stat Zero is here. Good morning, Stat. Fearless Freep, Monster Fan, who had just watched this magnificent classic Saturday night. Marvelous performance by Mr. March. Yeah, the producer wanted a couple different actors for this role, and none of them met the criteria that Ruben Mamoulian was looking for. Like, one of the guys would have made a great Hyde, but not a Jekyll, and vice versa. And so he put his foot down and said, I want Fredric March, who at that point was sort of like light fare. He hadn't done really any heavy drama stuff. But this movie won him an Oscar for Best Picture, as I mentioned, and it also started his path towards more meaty and dramatic roles. He would win another Oscar in 1945, I think it was, for The Best Years of Our Lives. which is a fantastic movie. Pop Culture Avenger is here. Good morning. George Travalos is here. Good morning. Bill Glasby says good morning. The Normie Nerd. And my list just shot to the bottom again. I hate when it does that. I don't know why it does that. Devil Flyer March was the president in 7 Days in May in 1964. Wonderful as is this movie. That's an excellent movie. I love that film. Burt Lancaster, Kirk Douglas, Edmund O'Brien, and of course Fredric March. Really, really great film. Raven Saber says good morning. Dr. Mass says he watched the 1912 silent version of this last night. There is colorized version on YouTube, and it was very good, only 12 minutes long. That would be the Barrymore version. I believe that's longer than 12 minutes, though, because I've seen that. His transformation is great, too. He does a lot with body language, very dramatic. He always claimed that they didn't use makeup, but that's horseshit. They used makeup. You can tell in some of those shots, he's got this egg head, but for a lot of the transformation scenes where he's doing all the body language and the shaking and the hair falling in front of him, and all that stuff with the fingers, that's the other thing. They put extensions on the fingers, so when he holds it up to his face, it's like his fingers are like this long. Stat Zero says the John Barrymore version is my second favorite version. Sorry, Tracy. Yeah, Spencer Tracy is too earthy. I don't believe him as his urbane Dr. Jekyll. And his makeup was just so. And again, he was hampered by the Breen or the Hayes Committee code. So, yeah, it's not my favorite. It's sort of like the Claude Rains version of the Phantom of the Opera. I can't stand that one. Yes, the big budget and Technicolor and singing. And that's the part that kills me is the singing. But again, fair to middling makeup, it's the Lon Chaney Jr. one that does it for me every time. Funny story about that. You got the Andrew Lloyd Webber Phantom of the Opera, big, huge Broadway success. And my wife wanted to see it. She likes musicals and I don't, but she wanted to see it. So I'm like, oh, okay, well, I'd probably see that. It's Phantom of the Opera. That'll be cool. It's got a monster in it. So we went up to Toronto to catch it, and we get to the intermission, and I'm like this. I'm all bug-eyed. She leans over. She goes, "Isn't this great?" And I'm like, "Yeah, I guess it's okay, but I mean, it's an awful lot of singing." And she looks at me. She goes, "It's Phantom of the Opera." And I'm like, yeah, I know, but I thought it was going to be like the Lon Chaney version, like maybe there'd be singing in the background, or something, but there'd be acting and dialogue, and we'd see that horrible face and everything, but he's like this handsome dude who's singing romantically and everything. And it's like, yeah, Nolan didn't know what he was getting into when he went to see that, so she still makes fun of me over that. George theorizes, they say, Jekyll, because of the Heckle and Jekyll cartoon shorts during the 40s. I think the cartoon changed the pronunciation permanently. Could be. I don't know. Stat Zero says, now people were saying Jekyll for a long time. The author went on record saying this movie had it correct, if I remember hearing it right. Busybodies in government always messing in our entertainment. Yeah, you could say it was the beginning of cancel culture. Oh, you want to make a racy movie that has a hooker in it that actually behaves like a hooker? Well, sorry, you can't do that. It's for the children. Stat Zero says, "Oh man, that scene where the hooker thought he was gone for good, and then he comes back. Still one of the scariest scenes in history, as far as I'm concerned." Yeah, it's frightening because there's a lot of women that are battered and abused in today's world, and that's the story there is that this battered woman finally thinks she's free, was promised she was free, believed she was free, and then he shows up and he's angrier and madder than ever, and oh, it really is scary. Brody Mull says good morning to Comicsgate. Good morning, Brody. What about says ahoy, Nolan? Very cool. Oh, thank you, JDC, for the $4.99 super chat. That's a good cigar. Love this series. I've actually gone back and watched all of last year's as well. Super fun. Hey, thanks, buddy. Appreciate it. We have a lot of fun doing these monster movies this time of year. Crease 1984 says Stevenson was a heck of a writer. Devil Flyer reminds me and you to hit that like button and subscribe to the channel. Please do hit the bell and you'll get notifications of all the shows. Not just the monster shows, but when I resume the storytellers and other shows that I do on topical subjects of pop culture, particularly in comics, you'll get notified because you're part of the team. So join the team. Hit that like button like you would hit your favorite experimental potion. The poor Rains Phantom caught in a freaking romantic comedy. That ruined that guy's life. And at the end, the two guys end up going out on a date. Ha ha ha. Lon Chaney Sr. Did I say Junior? Well, if I said Junior, I must have had a brain fart. Okay, that's enough of that talk. The Van Helsing Hyde. What a horrible movie that was. Musicals never made sense to me. Who breaks out in a big number in the middle of the street? I'm hit and miss on those things. I'm not, I'm mostly miss because I just don't care for that kind of stuff. Sometimes the music is really good in a show like Guys and Dolls. I like that. My favorite is 1776 because it deals with history and it was written by a historian. So a lot of that stuff is really accurate and the music is really good. I watch that movie every year. I love it. 1776. But by and large, I don't really like musicals. How shocking this must have been in 1931. I think so. I was sort of shocked the first time I saw it, and I saw this probably in the late 1980s was the first time I ever caught it. What about League of Extraordinary Gentlemen? It's Hyde. He was a monster. LOL. Ah, yes, The League of Extraordinary Gentlemen, the movie that drove Sean Connery into retirement. That's true. He so hated his experience on it. He said, "That's it. I'm out." All right. That's it. We got one super chat today, and I appreciate that, JDC. Got some more modern films coming up. We jump back to 1931 here. And, Sheldon Martin says, holy smokes, I'm awake early enough to catch it live. Well, good. Glad you made it. Devil Flyer says, old movies are great to try to place yourself back in that time. Such fun. Well, I agree. If you put yourself in the position of being an audience member in 1931 and you watch, or whatever year it is we're talking about, you can imagine what your reception would be like if you were around at that time, based on what else was going on. And the good ones still hold up, Yeah, okay, nostalgic in certain ways, certain things dated, but all pop culture becomes dated at some point, even if the movies are about eras that were old even when they made the movie. For example, you see a Western, and you can tell what decade that Western was made in, whether it was the 30s, 40s, 50s, 60s, 70s, 80s, 90s, just by the musical score, the hairstyles, the way the actors are dressed, the lighting, all of that stuff dates it. Yes, 19, Sheldon, yes, the 31 was in the height of the Great Depression. It started in 1929, and we didn't come out of it until like 1941. So let's see what we got. What we got lined up for tomorrow. Tomorrow is the David Cronenberg Grossfest, The Fly from 1987, starring Jeff Goldblum. I remember this movie revolted me, and I haven't seen it in decades. So I'll be renting that one today. And then on Wednesday, right? Today's Monday, so Tuesday will be The Fly, and then Wednesday will be Ridley Scott's Alien, the one that started it all. So we'll be talking about that. So that's it for today, gang. Thanks for tuning in, and we will see you tomorrow for day 18 of the 31 Days of Monsters, and we'll be talking about The Fly. So go find that, rent it if you have to. I don't know. I didn't look to see if it was available for free anywhere. I don't know. So you'll just have to do a little extra homework and find it. But certainly all the stuff is pretty much available to rent on Amazon or other rental places like YouTube. So, and it's cheap. It's like $3.99, So have a great day, and we shall see you tomorrow morning, gang. Bye-bye now.